Hello, ladies and gentlemen. A happy Independence Day. This is going to be a year that's going to define India in so many more ways than one. Prime Minister Modi's speech from the Red Fort, something that's been watched out for very closely. Our focus, decoding what the focus has been, what the deliverables will be. Prime Minister Modi's speech from the Red Fort focused on the youth. University education, to free coaching, to aiming big and assuring no resource crunch. To women, their tremendous contribution from economy to defense, charting the nation's growth trajectory. An appeal to political opponents to support women's reservation bill. He spent considerable time on the pace and intentionality of nation's growth in last 12 years, marking out the specifics of development while talking about how the nation now needs to focus on the decisive years ahead, charting out a Saptadhara, 7 streams of development from manufacturing to agriculture to food processing and technology to innovation to Gati Shakti and Raksha Shakti with focus on Atmanirbharta. Prime Minister spoke of green and blue economy, focusing on sustainable growth across India's land and maritime sectors, and the last being India's soft power. The 7th stream is India's soft power, reflecting the country's ambition to expand its global cultural and diplomatic influence. He spoke that during the war, there was attempts at fear-mongering by some, but how the citizens' first approach has paid off. I'm being joined at this point by P.K. Mishra, who's a former ADG with BSF, Mithali Nikore, who's a founder and chief economist with Nikore Associates, and Pavan Duggal, who's a cyber expert. Thank you very much, all three of
Vande
you, for
Mataram.
joining me. Happy Independence Day to all three of you.
Yes.
Well, Mithali, let me just start with you first, Mithali.
Okay.
What do you make out of Prime Minister's messaging from the Red Fort? A whole lot of focus for the youth and for women. What do you make out of that?
No, absolutely. I think, Sneha, firstly, happy Independence Day to you and all the viewers. I think, for the Prime Minister, the recent protests that we saw, at Jantar Mantar and Delhi, and which have sort of ignited a lot of questions amongst the youth across the country. These are important themes to address head on. And I'm glad he did that because the question of jobs, the question of what is my future, the question of unemployment, these are questions that are, plaguing the youth of this country. And I think the fact that he has committed today to saying that, we are going to create these jobs, we are going to work together with the private sector to create these jobs, we are going to create an environment where innovation is fostered, where businesses have the right to operate. That is the only way to create jobs. You can't just say creating government jobs. And I think that's where the Prime Minister, being a respected figure, really is the differentiator, because he has to keep saying that, look, we are working to create jobs in the private sector. Don't rely only on these competitive exams to get jobs. So I think a lot of those fears, he has tried to allay them today. But the youth of this country are an impatient lot, and they should be, because they have been waiting for a while. And until we start seeing that translating into actual employment and the numbers changing on the ground, they are going to keep questioning, which I think is really the bedrock of democracy in that sense.
I also want to ask you about women's reservation, but I'll just get back to that.
Yeah.
Pavan Duggal, there was this whole conversation about technology, about AI push, about how there are universities, access to foreign education, about how the country needs to advance, not just in terms of energy, but in terms of technology, and prove its might internationally. How do you look at that?
First and foremost, happy Independence Day to you and entire viewers. Today, the Independence Day has brought in the right music to our ears. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has captured the correct essence of the hopes and the aspirations of the Indian people on this occasion. Well, he's one of the very few heads of states across the world who realizes and constantly emphasizes the need for having a frontal collaboration with emerging technologies. His focus on artificial intelligence and his focus on creating a new kind of capacity building program for making crores of Indians AI skill tech ready. I think a phenomenal new jump, a new vista of electronic governance. So this address tells us, look, AI is no longer just a toy. AI has to be used as an instrumentality of effective governance. And in that regard, they have his particular speech has focused on creating a new workforce for India, which is AI tech ready. I think once you have that particular thought process, you are not only signaling the right signals, but you're also telling the world that, look, we will potentially create the biggest and the most potent AI skill force in the world. And that's if the government is behind such an initiative, I'm sure the signals are going to be taken by the corporate and the private sector as well. In addition, his entire speech is focusing on utilizing artificial intelligence as a new catalyst, as a new force for the Indian economy. His focus on various aspects of technology, whether it's coming up with new semiconductor chip design, whether it's coming up with the new soft power, and whether it's ultimately coming up with an ecosystem where for more data centers will require more cleaner and nuclear energy, tells us one thing, that here is a mind of a statesman, a visionary, who's working over time and who's wanting to give India the right vision, the right step in the right direction. When I look at this address of today, and I compare with the Independence Day addresses of other prime ministers, including the present prime minister over the last more than 50 odd years, I'm actually amazed and very delighted to see the massive focus on technology. All these years, we've just been giving lip service to technology. Ever since Prime Minister came to power in 2014, he has been shepherding the use of technology in governance, whether it was to digital India ecosystem, whether it's to constant e-governance, whether it's to transparency. But now, his current day address understands the ground realities and highlights that for the nation. A nation which is still thinking that, look, AI is still something sometimes away and we can have the time. His entire address understands and underlines the necessity for the government and governance ecosystem to recognize the growing new emerging ground realities of technologies like artificial intelligence, like chip manufacturing, and like soft power to ultimately pave a new vista for the growth of the Indian economy. And rightfully so. India is now no longer the biggest democracy in the world, it's the most populous nation in the world. So, what India does actually becomes a benchmarking standard for the world. And I'm pretty confident that this kind of an announcement by the Prime Minister is going to be paving the way for other countries to follow suit. So, if India can actually aim to go ahead and train through AI skills crores of Indians, that's giving a signal to all other governments. Guys, wake up, follow the Indian model. Because if you're going to enrich the Indian ecosystem and the Indian population with AI skill sets, there is no kind of technology and no kind of outside force which can defeat this kind of a mindset and this kind of a population. So I think it's really one of the wonderful kind of speeches that I've listened to in recent times, and potentially one which is transformative because technology is already transforming itself. We already have arrived at the age of agentic AI, and with artificial general intelligence coming in the next few months or couple of years, and super intelligence staring in our faces in the next few years, it's time that this kind of a revolutionary approach to electronic governance through participative governance, using artificial intelligence, emerging technologies, through clean energy, through these kinds of approaches on new vistas of governance, I think opens up a new door. So fantastic beginning. Now the onus is on all of us Indians. How best can we support the government in this particular vision and thrust the position of India as thought leadership in this area?
Absolutely. In fact, PK Mishra,
Yeah.
while the Prime Minister spoke about Red Terror, and he said Naxalism is breathing its last breath in India, he spoke about something else, and Dimagi Naxals. What do you make out of that?
Yes, I can well tell you. In fact, the credit goes to our Honorable Prime Minister. In fact, first of all, I really salute him for bringing out our Vande Mataram of Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay on 150th year of anniversary from the Red Fort. In fact, it was astonishing and I really liked it. Naxalism, in fact, I have seen it. I was walking in Chhattisgarh and those areas in Malkangiri and all. I have seen the way the development was not there and the region for which the tribals, they were against the government. Things have, they are the past. And you see, after Hedma was killed and Karaigura Hill was that operation took place, in fact, it came to zero. The Naxalism, which started with Charu Majumdar in 1970s and all, it is totally zero, and the credit goes to Honorable Sri Modi ji. And I have seen those areas, the development, best of all, it's not only security forces operation, it is because of the development which the state governments, they have done in Naxal affected areas, particularly in Saranda and Dandakaranya and those areas, Bastar and all, it is astounding. And credit goes to them. Credit goes to my security forces who operated for 31 days in Karaiguta Hill operations. And I am very sure it's not only Naxalism which has been crushed, even the, say, particularly, you see the border management, you see the northeast, what is all happening. Everywhere, you see, we are holding, and in fact, we are facing. I have gone to those areas in China border. See the development of communication. See the development of our troops deployment. See the development of our Air Force landing places. And we are facing China. And in fact, what has happened in Galwan Hills, in fact, China suffered very badly. They lost 42 persons there. And nobody knows that we have killed, our Madras regiment, they have killed 42 PIA soldiers. This all the credit goes for the development of logistics, particularly the defense logistics. You know, we are going to make rifles in India. It's not we are going to purchase rifles from France. Now we are going to make rifles in India. Credit again goes to him. And I liked it when he spoke for women's reservation. That is the Nari Sakti.
Right, but because you're also, you've
Yes.
also been in the BSF, sir. I want to ask
No
you this:
doubt.
what do you make out of Dimagi Naxals? Of course, we'll come to the women's reservation as well. But
yes.
what do you
Dimagi
make out of
Naxals.
Dimagi Naxals?
Yes, very. I mean, indirectly, you have asked me this question. I was trying to avoid that, but anyway.
It's
the
okay if you do
Dimagi-
not want to answer that. That's
No, no,
fine.
no,
That's
I
fine.
will-
That's
I
fine.
will-
Don't
I
worry.
will-
That's okay, sir.
I
Not a
will
problem
tell
at all.
No. I will tell it. You have asked me that. I will tell
No,
it.
no, no. I understand.
I know that Dimaki Naxals were there, and it was there before 2014, and Chhattisgarh Dimaki Naxals were there, and in Bengal also Dimaki Naxals were there. I have seen it, how they were operating, how that the development did not take place, how you see the troops, particularly the coordinated operations, they were not there. Dimaki Naxals were there in many ways, with many, and even many parties. I don't want to speak
Okay.
more, but these Demagi Naxalites have gone. And in fact, all the states are now prospering in those Naxal affected areas. Thanks. Salute to my Prime Minister. Yes, any other question?
Right. In fact, Ramanuj Mishra also joins me. He's a director for
Oh,
Career Launcher. Thank you very much for joining us, Ramanuj. But Mitali, let me just come to you. In fact, to all of you, I want to ask you this question. Prime Minister Modi also appealed to the political parties for the amended version of the women's reservation bill that's brought in.
Yeah.
Was supposed to be in the parliament, didn't happen. There are obviously, the opposition is raising a whole lot of concerns about delimitation and everything, about the seats, the representation that eventually will come down, the effect on women. The government is saying that this is high time, it needs the implementation. Mitali, as somebody who's on the ground working with women, how much of this really means, what does it mean for India in today's times?
So, Sneha, I want to tell the story of a woman sarpanch that I recently was working with for her village. She's one of the women sarpanches in Rajasthan, and she's in that position because of the reservation. Initially, she got the impetus to run for the elections in her panchayat because the seat was reserved, and it was not like her husband or anyone in her family was political. She just wanted to work for the people, and she ran, and now she has built such amazing sports infrastructure in her village. She has built rainwater harvesting infrastructure in her village. She's trying to solve the problem of water collection, because so many women in her village spend hours and hours of their day to collect water. And with the new Jal Shakti Yojana and the new schemes to sort of bring in water collection, she's managed to leverage funds, and they have actually built the infrastructure themselves with their own hands, the women in the village. So, when you have women in positions of political leadership, when you have that representation of women, a seat on the table, that's when the concerns of women come to the fore. Because until now, in my 20 years of working on gender equality and women empowerment, particularly in a mainstreaming way, like I don't just work on gender equality, I work on job creation and then bringing in women into those jobs. Honestly, till now, the senior women leaders that I have worked with in industry, in politics, the ministers, the panchayat leaders, they are the ones who always voice the concerns of women. So, not having women at the table, I mean, 80 years of independence, when are women going to get that independence? When are women going to get the freedom to leave their house, the freedom to speak, the freedom to voice their concerns? For this, we really need this bill to pass. We need 2029. We can't wait anymore. The Gen Zs have been protesting. They've been asking for a seat at the table, and rightly so. Women have been waiting for nearly a century. It's enough is enough.
Right. In fact, Mr. Ramanuj, I believe you have to leave us as well. Mr. Ramanuj, what do you make out of Prime Minister Modi's messaging to the youth?
Uh, First of all, happy Independence to all of you and all the viewers. See, the today's Prime Minister was quite focused on youth, and he really wanted to remind us as well. So he talks about how youth can lead in even doing a population survey which is going on, because he was very right in that, because digital things has come up, and every kids at home are more literate of handling those datas and all. So he put an appeal to all the youth, why not you do that and make it faster. And even he talks about the Gen Z, and he referred couple of times how the entire Gen Z can be a part of it. And he said that all the development is also going to benefit youth. So I think the Prime Minister's speech this time focus in that, and he also speak about how we can use the technology. Also, he was looking at one perspective he built up, because I come from a industry education only, and he said, why not we can come up with all India coaching facilities which can build on technology, and it is affordable to all the kids and all the youths in this country. So I think couple of a good thing has come up, and definitely, if anything come in that foray, many of educators will be very ready for taking up that kind of role, and even we can contribute to that ambition what Prime Minister Modi has kept up for us.
Pavan Duggal, when we're talking about technology, technology cannot really be divided when it comes to gender. It cannot be divided when it comes to age, though the young are more, they have more access and more acumen to handle technology. But a whole lot of things that the Prime Minister really spoke is also very critically linked to technology. Technology alone cannot be seen in isolation. I think every sectoral development is very critically linked to technology. And when we are talking about technology, say we're talking about 6G. We're talking about uh, the UPI spread. We're talking about so many other aspects. How much of this really is going to get accessible? Because even when we talk about 5G, the penetration of 5G, the usage of 5G, the risks that are coming with it as well. And when I say risks, I just say the kind of screen time that's getting used across age groups, starting from, you even have screens being given to infants. So obviously, one has to have the focus on technology. Cannot take it away. AI, all the latest technologies in different sectors, that's possible. But there also has to be a policy way of looking at how to ensure it gets streamlined the right way. Or would you say that's really not in the government's domain at this point?
No, I'm of the firm opinion that for technology dissemination to every section of the society, there will have to be enabling policy frameworks. Now, for supporting this vision of the Prime Minister, you will have to come up with enabling legal infrastructure which can help support and implement this particular vision. For example, there's so much focus and emphasis on artificial intelligence. But the reality is that today India does not have a dedicated law on artificial intelligence. We are pretty behind the curve as a number of the countries have already come up with laws on AI. So let this particular speech be a wake-up call for India to wake up out of our deep slumber. Do not take technology for granted, because amongst all the technologies, it's artificial intelligence that's going to strip you to the barest minimum, and that's going to surprise you even to the highest extent possible. The pace with which technology is developing is telling us, I'm not waiting for anyone, nor for users, nor for legal systems, nor for governance ecosystem. What it is saying is, I'm moving at my pace. You want to catch on? Please catch on.
And,
For the
Mr.
purposes of
Dugal,
India,
even while catching on, there's going to be a huge generational divide. There was a time when you spoke about a generational divide, a generation gap in households in terms of age, in terms of preferences. Technology is going to be one of the leading generation gaps, because if you look at what's now infamously known as WhatsApp University, a whole generation even now gets their information from the WhatsApp, and the ability to discern between what's fake and what's real is extremely hard. And it's not just for the generation, say, that's above 50, 60, but it's even for the young people. That generation gap with technology is something that I'm sure the world is as well grappling, and India needs to grapple real fast.
I cannot agree more with your observation. I believe that's the ground reality. But I think at the occasion of the Indian Independence Day, when this kind of a call has been given by the Honorable Prime Minister, it's also important for us to encourage Indians
Absolutely.
not to walk the path of cognitive colonialism. More and more Indians, especially the younger generation, are willing to become cognitive slaves of
What do
technologies
you mean
like
by
artificial
that?
intelligence.
Oh, you
That
mean to
means
say
to say,
overusage of that?
no, no,
Over-dependence?
no, what I'm trying to say is that today Indians are saying my today's work needs to be done by AI. I'm not bothered about tomorrow. I do not want to go ahead and use my cognitive capabilities. So I'm willing to be a cognitive slave of AI.
Yeah.
So consequently, now Indians have started using AI not just for purposes of doing their day-to-day works, but also for life advice, for relationship advice, for sharing all information. So we already have a scenario when there is a great Indian data vomiting revolution happening. Indians are vomiting data on social media, on AI, on the internet without understanding the legal ramifications. On top of it, we are actually working towards a path of being more dumber citizens, in the sense that we do not want to go ahead and reignite our cognitive thought processes. So this call of the Prime Minister should also be a basis for telling Indians, guys, use AI with care. Do not surrender your cognitive capabilities to AI. And ultimately, AI is going to make you more dumber. Already, with so much advances in AI happening, the bigger question coming up is, are we going to be relevant? And when AI is going to make all our decisions, how can we make AI more accountable? So, a good starting point will be that India should start coming up with a dedicated law on making AI accountable. Because when you are talking of AI in the most populous nation in the world, you have ramifications which are not just sovereign in nature, but ramifications which are economic, which are political, which are societal, and which are psychological as well. So all these aspects have to be taken into consideration. But ultimately, for the first time, we have this kind of a vision in the Indian ecosystem by the head of the state. And now this vision has to be implemented. The best way going forward is let's not do any cut, copy, paste. Let's come up with our own customized approaches because we have to address the existing ground realities. And let's encourage more and more Indians to be more competitive with AI. Don't depend on AI, use AI only as a tool, as a first cut point for giving information. But please continue to keep on developing your cognitive capabilities because ultimately those cognitive capabilities will be the distinguishing factor between us and other people as we go forward.